Disclaimer. To the Pharisees and Karens out there.
How dare you!
All guests on this show do not reflect the opinions of the host. The purpose of this show is to have interesting conversations, stretch our minds, and grow.
Not what we want!
If you are looking for an echo chamber, viewer and listener discretion
is advised.
You talk about extreme.
If knowledge is a crime, we were guilty from the start. They don't fear the questions, they fear the spark. So we steal the fire, not to rule, not to reign, just to see through smoke and mirrors and call peace by name. They call it dangerous thinking, they call it heresy. But fire doesn't fear the dark, it only shows what's real.
Hey guys, what is happening and what is up, baby? Hold out that glass because we are about to fill it up. Welcome to the Prometheus Lens podcast, the place where the conversations are always enlightening. I'm your host, Doc Brown, and here we like to use the allegory of the Prometheus Lens to take a second look at everything. Hey guys, if you're new to the channel, welcome to the hero's journey. Please be sure and hit that like button and smash that subscribe button. And while I got your attention, guys, please check out this banner down below with all of our social medias at their various platforms. That would be much appreciated. Well, man, guys, I'm glad you decided to come out and hang out with me. This was a last-minute kind of live thing, and I'm gonna kill this music because I actually get to hear this in my headset. And I asked you guys in the chat if it was getting choppy because I don't know if I got an internet issue or what. But let me know if the audio starts sounding bad or getting all broke up. My intro video was just like real choppy, like it was struggling, and everything, like my little sound effects, everything that I'm trying to do, man, as far as like playing a sound, it's just da, 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 da. So we're going to try to get through this. Luckily I don't have a lot of audio or visual presentations. This is just a conversation. I know not too long ago I did a study on the St. Patrick's Day and the meaning of the word leprechaun and how that kind of tied in, to the Tuatha Dé and the dragon court and or serpent seed. And you guys said you really enjoyed that type of format and that style, how I was doing that. So that's kind of what this is going to be. It's just going to be me talking, kind of looking at my notes, and here and there pulling up some images for references to show you guys. But those that are not aware, if you don't follow me on the social medias, I have started my second book, and I kind of put the cover art out there, and I actually put it in the community page here on YouTube and asked for your guys' opinions on it. I had two different variations of that, and the vote, and that, honestly, it was my favorite too, but the vote and the consensus with you guys was the book cover that had the DNA strand swirling up to the Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail there, and that's significant. But I titled the book The Tale of Two Trees Chasing the Dragon, and I actually had somebody in the community post was like, you might not know what that, chasing the dragon, is kind of a metaphor for. I know. I know. I've done that on purpose. I've always been a little cheeky and esoteric, and it's kind of like a double entendre, if you will. So for those that is unfamiliar, that's a term they use on the streets for freebasing cocaine. We're not freebasing cocaine in this book, okay? And it's not about cocaine. But I kind of done that because we're on the tail of the dragon. We're chasing the dragon, and we're going through his lineage and his peoples and kind of seeing behind the veil there. So, but also it was a shocking, kind of title. So I meant to kind of, grab people's attention and shake them a little bit. So that is the, what's the word I'm looking for? That is the reasoning behind the madness there, if you will. But guys, I'm so excited because this kind of branches off of my other book where I dove into the serpent seed theory and to the offspring of Cain. This kind of just dovetails right into it, and some of the other books that I've been reading, getting inspiration from, and getting some of my own research together. It's going to be a wild ride. I actually didn't schedule any interviews this week whatsoever, and I've done nothing but read and take notes and sit at the computer. And I even bought me a fancy new keyboard, because I'm like, if I'm going to be writing, I need a good keyboard, man. And this thing weighs a lot. It's solid, but it's actually made for writers. It's a mechanical typewriter, because the other one I had was a little skinny one, had so much latency, and it wouldn't recognize when it hit the cap locks. A lot of times I'd be typing, I'd look up and have 3 sentences already written, but they're all in cap locks, where the cheap keyboard didn't recognize me hitting that cap lock button. So I'm really excited, guys. And as I was going through all this stuff, I was like, man, there's so many little episodes here that I can do and kind of tease out some of the book to you guys. And this was one of the things that I had read about that I thought was extremely fascinating. And when you go through all the different comparative mythologies, a lot of this stuff just, it's like gears on a wheel. It ties in so perfectly. If I get excited about it, I know you're going to get excited about it. And if you like that episode I did on the Irish folklore and the Tuatha Dé, this is right in pocket with that, so you're definitely going to enjoy this one too. Let me check in with you guys a little bit in the chat here before we kind of take off, because I want to communicate with everybody and let you know, hey, thank you so much for coming out and hanging out. But we're going to get into the meat here real soon. But let's tenderize the meat first. You know what I'm saying? 83 golden teachers, you're stoked. Thank you. Mama Lucia, she's stoked too. I'm stoked. This is some great, fascinating stuff, guys. And like I said in my book, I've never had an original idea. I just read a bunch of other people's stuff, and I take pieces from everybody and kind of compile them together. So I try to give credit where credit is due. But I'm pretty good, if I do say so myself, at finding these pieces and connecting some of these dots. And it excites me. It's a treasure hunt. Rifleman should be a good one. Yes, I hope so. Got Dunt in the house. What's up, Dunt? Glad you could make it. CB Black Ink, what's happening? Welcome, welcome. A lot of my regulars in here, guys. Thank you so much. I love y'all. Okay, now I guess we can kind of get into this and start this discussion off here. And I want to try to lay some groundwork first, because I don't want to assume people, you know, have read my book or kind of familiar with some of this material. I want to lay down just a little bit of a foundation before we get into the meat. So we're going to have some appetizers before the filet mignon, guys. Okay. So, okay, I got my little notes over here just like last time. You'll catch me kind of looking over here because this is fresh material. I've not had enough time to memorize it and go on a bunch of shows and, you know, have the dance all choreographed and memorized like I do the Epic of Esau. Enough time and repetition, you can teach a monkey to do anything, my old man used to say. So right here I got explain the dragon court, and quotations show image. So if I do a quick screen share, and we're going to bounce right back to this view here, but I'm going to pull this image up just so you can see it as a visual reference here. Let me go to share screen. Thank you, guys. I don't know why it does that. It done that to me not that long ago. It's like when I switch my screens, it just automatically mutes me. All right, let me back up. Okay, this is the emblem of the dragon court. So you have this red cross right here, and as you can see, each side you have these winged dragons coming off of the edge here. And then on the inside, you have this flower, and this flower is a lotus. And all this stuff, all these things are in here for a reason. Okay, there's so much symbology and metaphor behind all these things. I'm not going to deep dive into that tonight. I have already, and it's going to be a part of the book, but this is just for a visual quick reference. And then around the outside edge here, you'll notice this is the Ouroboros, the Aurora Borealis, the serpent eating its own tail. And resting on top, you have the crown. So this is the insignia for the royal dragon court, and this crown, shows you that they have the divine right to rule. This cross, kind of backing or trying to back their claims that their bloodline even goes back to the King David and Jesus, Mary Magdalene, all this kind of stuff. The lotus petals and the serpents. And one thing I'll throw in real quick here that I thought was interesting and I'd never heard before. This Aurora Borealis, according to Nicholas de Vere in his book, the Dragon Legacy, that's something that I've been really diving into and pulled a lot of stuff from. But where I've read other stuff and I got a pretty good biblical foundation, I've connected a lot of dots here. But alchemically, this symbol is alchemical in nature. So by the serpent eating its own tail, consuming itself, morphs, and like a phoenix that rises from the ashes, or a butterfly in a cocoon grows into something greater, it turns into a dragon. And I will get into a little bit of that tonight because it's part of the discussion, that this is actual literal, and you'll see why later. This family basically consumes itself to metamorphosize into this supreme being, or this supreme race rather. So I'll go back to the regular screen here, and now I'm going to double check. Okay, I'm not muted. For some reason, it's like when I switch to that share screen, it wants to mute me. Okay, now with this symbology, you have three different versions. Basically, you have a dragon, you have a serpent, and like I mentioned earlier, the serpent morphs and evolves, if you want to use that term, into a dragon later by consuming itself. And the other, and this was surprising to me, was a crocodile, which it's reptilian in nature, and it goes back to Egypt and their god Sobek. And actually, I did switch too soon. Let's go back to the share screen real quick. Make sure it doesn't mute me. Okay, I'm not muted. I think I got it pulled up here on the web page. Yep. This guy right here. This is Sobek. He's half human, half crocodile. So this dragon court stems all the way back into Samaria and Egypt. And if you read my book, Epic of Esau, I get into that a little bit when I talk about Abraham, when he takes a woman from Egypt, from the Pharaoh, and that's where we get the other bloodline. Okay, she was of the dragon court. And forgive me, I've sitting there, I've got a brain fart for some reason, but you guys probably know it in the chat. Throw it up for me. Her name, she was the one that Sarah gave to Abraham, but she was of the dragon court. But her name is slipping me for some reason. I'm having a huge brain fart. So if I come back to this camera, okay, so this goes back to Samaria, Arcadia, the Sumerian kings list, and the Anunnaki. And what's funny is another thing, I talked about this in the book, and I didn't understand it at the time, but now I do. Gilgamesh in that Sumerian kings list, and I talk about it in my book. I make a mention that I thought it was peculiar that when it talks about their mother and father, it lists Gilgamesh. I can't remember if it was, I think it was his father. It was either his father or his mother. It lists this spirit or entity. And when you look into that, it is a vampire. It's vampiristic in nature. And that ties into this. As you may have wondered why I made an AI image of me as a vampire, because this is part of it too, guys. Hagar, that is her name. Hagar. Hagar was of the dragon court. Okay. So we have this vampiristic stuff in the Sumerian kings list, and also Inanna. When you read into Inanna, she has a lot of vampiristic associations with her as well. It's said that she actually devours her lovers. And this kind of ties into the Sumerian creation story. They take this dragon court all the way back to there, and they say that Enki in the Sumerian, or Samael in the Akkadian, created mankind. And he made this subset race that was smarter, better, and would rule over and lord over the worker bees, basically. They say that is them. They are the ones that were created by the gods and made superior, and have the divine right to rule and lord over the other species. And of course, I'm painting with a broad brush here because I'm kind of just, like I said, laying foundation to get to the topic that we're going to talk about today. This dragon court was a matriarchal society. And so my buddy Steve, he's going to be excited if and when he sees this, because he's been really deep diving into the divine feminine. And this plays a lot into this here, guys. But some of the names of this matriarchal society and the offspring or subclasses, I guess you want to call it, in this family, or titles, are many, and they vary. But some of these that are, pertaining to our discussion today, and you may have heard some of these from me or Gary Wayne, people kind of just lightly touch on this. But like I said, in this book I'm writing, I am going to deep dive it. And dumbify it. I'm going to redneck it for you guys. That way, we can all understand it. Because a lot of times, Gary Wayne, some of these big brain guys, they speak so fast and they just think we know all this other stuff. They'll mention these names and families and just assume we know who they are, but we don't. I'm going to really dumbify this because I think it's important for everyone to understand. But like I said, these names or titles that you may have heard are fairies, the fair folk. They were really pale complexioned and fair complexioned. They were either red haired or blonde haired, and green eyed or blue eyed. And this kind of goes into the whole Nazi German, the Uberman, the Overman. So, but we also have Elvins, the Elven race. You get into Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. All those supernatural or crazy, weird beings and races they talk about are real. And just over the centuries and throughout time, they've just been, what's the word I'm looking for? Sensationalized and blew plumb out of proportion and lose their true meaning and who and what they were. And we're going to get into that. But also you have vampires. I mentioned those earlier. This is part of this family, and it's not the pale-skinned bloodsuckers that can turn into bats and all this stuff that Hollywood's turned it into. And werewolves. Once again, it's been sensationalized and blown up out of proportion to spread fear and fear-mongering. These were actual people. And I'm going to show you how and why they got these names. I've already explained the fairies and the elvins. They were fair-skinned. They were the fair folk. And these vampires and werewolves we're going to get into here in a little bit. One of the things they done is that they practiced ancestor worship. So they would pray to the spirits of their ancestors and ask for guidance and wisdom, and even sometimes ask them, to dwell inside of them. And this is kind of where the church picked up and got the idea of possession from. And in my book, The Epic of Esau, I talk about the Phoenicians, and some of these giant tribes did the same thing. And we see it in the island of Sardinia. They have all these huge megalithic architecture and structures and these giant tombs. And looking overhead, looking down, these look like a huge bull's head with horns. And they said that they would dwell in these tombs and visit their ancestors and spend the night with them, sometimes even live with them, in that tomb for extended times. And once again, through prayer and meditation, trying to get in contact with the other world to get guidance and wisdom and strength and all these things from their ancestors. You see it in a lot of other cultures. They call it the skull cults. You'll see that they have the skulls in the home, or they bury them under the threshold, their bodies, but the head's missing. And even at Göbekli Tepe, they found all these skull fragments and even holes drilled through them like they had run them through string. All of these point to ancestor worship. So that's kind of what's going on there. And it ties in to how some of these names came about. So as long story short, to get to the end of this foundation laying, this was the royal class, the dragon court. They had the divine right to rule, and basically as time went on, warlords arose, and through strength conquered and pushed out some of these members of the dragon court and ruling class, because the dragon court were known for their mental capabilities. They were really smart. They were good rulers, made good decisions. They had forethought, and some of them were talked about as being seers, and they had some like special magical abilities. And so they weren't like brute force strength, warlords. They were known for their mentality, and that kind of goes back to Genesis 6. The sons of God came down, bred with the daughters of men, and then they gave them all this technology. They had all this technology and knowledge. And then the warlords were basically overthrown by the merchant class, and De Vere calls these the tinkers. And these are the people that are still ruling today. And he says that's why you see the world in such a shape that it's in. Donald Trump is a classic tinker. He's a merchant. And they say that these people that rose to power in the merchant class, these tinkers, all they care about is money. All they care about is profit. And they don't care to, rape the people financially and rape the land and just, do all these bad things just for profit and for money. But how these tinkers took over and completely just dominated the way they did was through the help of the Catholic Church. And this is a huge conspiracy. I'll probably do a whole episode just on this, but just to kind of gloss over this, and I'm not going to get into the conspiracy, but through the Roman Catholic Church is how they dominated and overthrew all of these royals and placed in their puppets, the merchant class, these tinkers. But how they was able to do this was through a document that's contested, to say the least, and there's, like I said, a lot of conspiracy behind it. Was called the Donation of Constantine. And this was a document that supposedly, on Constantine's deathbed, brought in the Pope and the Popery, and basically just said, hey, I want you guys to have all the power. All the power of Rome goes to you. You have final say in all state matters. You have the power to enthrone or dethrone dynasties. All the power just goes to you. Now, first off, I mean, you tell me what king is ever going to relinquish all their power and not pass it down through the family line and the lineages. That stinks already. But another thing is when you go through the lineages and the genealogies, Constantine himself was of the Dragon Court. Why would he not only give up his power and his family's divine right to rule, and then give the power up to the Popery, who was actively trying to overthrow and destroy the Dragon Court? I mean, that doesn't make any sense, guys. So that stinks already, but there's so much stuff behind that, and I will get into that on another episode. CB Black Ink, thank you so much for that super chat. Thank you very, very much. Okay, so continuing on here, but another thing is, once they had this document, they had to basically have the aid of the people. They had to have the support of the people. So how do you do that? Okay, us conspiracy theorists already know. It's and forgive me if I mispronounce this, but the Hegelian dialectic. You know, you come up with a problem and you already have the solution in mind, you know, to get to the means of your end. And what they had done to make the people question or doubt these dragon courts, these royals, was a multifaceted approach. One of the things they spread rumors and stories and mythologies that they were no longer purebloods, that other warlords in their conquering had kidnapped and taken some of the people and raped them and interbred with them and basically tainted the bloodline. And the bloodline was what was important. That's what made you of the Dragon Court, was the blood. So, and the blood is where the power was. De Vere talks about this New Age, society now, and these, Wiccans. And he basically laughs at them and says they're phonies and they're fakes. And all the people that, push this New Age Wiccan type stuff and sell these grimoires and all this other stuff are tinkers. They're the merchant class. And they are raping and pillaging the people, selling them false hope that they can do magic, that they have power and can ascend and do all this stuff, when it doesn't matter. That they could have the best grimoires, the best potions, the best everything, but they're not of that divine blood. That's where the power is. So it's no magic is going to happen for them. So by spreading these stories, it made the people doubt the elven race, the fairies, the fair folk, the dragon court. Oh, they're saying, through all these wars and stuff that's happened, this people's been abducted and the women's been raped, and it's watered down the bloodline. They're no longer pure, so therefore they don't have power anymore. They can't even help you. So they sowed that seed of doubt into the people's mind there. But another thing that they did was through fear-mongering. Now remember, guys, this is coming from De Vere, and who is of the Dragon Court. So he has his biases. And so this is all from his perspective that I'm giving you here. But through the church, they spread fear-mongering. And that was another way for them to turn the people against them. That way they could flex their muscle and use this donation of Constantine to overthrow these royals. And some of the things that they done was labeling them as vampires and werewolves. Okay, and I told you we're going to get into that. And here's how this happened, and this got so sensationalized and spun and blew out of proportion. When you hear about vampires and werewolves, It's just like when you hear about the fairies or the elven race. We think of these mythological things, but no, they were real people. And they were all of this dragon court. And DeVere even says in his book that it wasn't that they were, better, or smarter in any way. It wasn't anything like that. It was just they were a sub-race. They were a subhuman race. They were a totally different race. And this goes with the Bible. It goes with Genesis 6. It's just confirming the biblical narrative. So, now let me get a quick drink here. Now, how did it get blew up the way it did? Like I said, these people practiced ancestor worship. And what I say? They would go into the tombs and meditate and pray to their ancestors for wisdom and guidance, and even for them to indwell them. We see this a lot even throughout many cultures, but like the Scythians, the Vikings, the Berserkers, they would pray to their dead ancestors to empower them and possess them. And that's how they got their, crazy strength and didn't fear death. All this stuff ties in together, guys. So here you have this royal dragon court, this ruling class that were really pale and lived in tombs a lot, and they seen them coming out of tombs and sleeping in tombs. So they started, spreading these rumors basically like they were undead. They were vampires. And then they also talked about them drinking blood. And this was something that was well known to the people at the time, because they did. And this is a biblical thing, right? It talks about, you shall not drink the blood. The power, the life force is in the blood. I touch on this in my book, Epic of Esau. The Amalekites, who were another giant hybrid race, their name means blood lickers. So this was a common practice, and this is what these royals did. Okay? So they were like, oh, they live in tombs, and they come out, they're undead. They drink blood. They're murderous, ravenous people. At night, they sneak out and kill people and drain them of their blood because they're monsters. And spread this fear. Same thing with the werewolves. They said, oh, here's these monsters that come out during the full moon and prey on the innocent and steal, people off the streets and kill them and drain them of their blood. And okay, I'm going to show you how all this ties in. To show you this is this dragon court. Because they did drink blood. But it wasn't just random people that they went out and just tried to, capture. We, us conspiracy theorists, heard some stuff about adrenochrome, right? That they would supposedly take these children and torture them and get all their cortisol levels and all this stuff, adrenaline spiked up, and then they would drain them of their blood and drink it. And the adrenaline and all the hormones that it releases kept them young, and rejuvenated and things like that. It's kind of like that, but how DeVere explains this is he says that no, these vampires, these quote-unquote vampires and these quote-unquote werewolves wasn't going out and just, grabbing people up and torturing them and, all this stuff. He said because it spikes their cortisol levels. It spikes all these other stress hormones that if they drunk it, it would, make the blood taste bad. If you thought it tasted good anyway, but it would make it taste worse. Like deer meat, when you kill a deer or an animal, if you don't kill it quickly, it releases all those hormones and it makes the meat harden. It gives it this gamey taste. And that's what DeVere was talking about. He said they weren't just going out and doing that because it tasted awful, and also you'd be slowly poisoning and killing yourself drinking all these stress hormones and things like that. It would have the opposite effect. But he said, but the blood they were drinking, once again, they kept it in the family. Just like you hear about the royals interbreeding to keep the bloodline pure. That was so important to them because, I had mentioned earlier, they believed the power is in the blood. This is what made them, a subhuman race and have magical abilities and have, really clear thinking and be smart. This is what made them special, was this blood. So they interbred. But another thing that they would do is within their family and bloodline, and this is where you get the image on my artwork, you had these Grail Maidens. And they also called them dragon princesses. And they were of the pure dragon seed and of a certain age, and they were virgins. This is the blood that they drank. It wasn't taken from some stranger, and it wasn't even just taken from them. It was a sacred thing. It was like love. They would willingly and lovingly give themselves to their family to make them stronger and healthier, because the power was in this blood. And the blood they would give them was from their menstrual cycle. So they were drinking the menstrual blood of these Grail Maidens, or these dragon princesses who were virgins and of pure elven serpent seed blood. So that's the blood they were drinking. They kept it in the family, but it was like a love thing. You see all these, romance novels about the vampires, the woman giving herself freely to him to feed. That's where they get this from, because it was a love act. Incestuous love act, but that's what it was. And because where they were in love and pleasure, it released good hormones, dopamine, and other things like that were good for them, quote unquote good for them. And the werewolves, how that tied in was because, they come out on full moons and did these things on full moons, because once again, it's tied to the menstrual cycle. That was the time that the majority of women, their blood flown. So this is very interesting. And this is the tip of the iceberg, guys. Okay, like I said, this is all foundation stuff. So, what are you guys thinking? I want to take a minute just to stop, let you guys throw in some comments or questions, and I'm going to quickly try to see if I can find some pictures for reference for you guys. Just type in Grail Maidens. So if I do share screen, and once again, I got to keep double checking that it ain't muting me. Okay. So here's some of these Grail Maidens depicted in artwork. See, here's a woman in a stained glass window, obviously in a church. And the Virgin, like the Virgin Mary, they talk about that too. And here's this chalice that's representative of the woman's vulva. And inside is her essence, her menstrual flow, the power, the Eucharist. So yeah, and also just a little fun fact for you, in the book of Revelation, where it talks about the whore of Babylon riding on the beast, and in her cup was abominations. When you go to the Greek, it says porneia, that the whore of Babylon rides on the beast, the scarlet beast, with her cup of porneia. I think it's referring to this same thing, guys. So here's these Grail Maidens, or dragon princesses, as they call them. So if I go back to you guys, dun, what a trip. Yeah, man, it is a trip, especially when you go through the biblical narrative and you start showing how all these things click together. I mean, it connects dots across the world, and I'm going to get into some of them tonight and show you. Robert, howdy everybody. Howdy to you, sir. Yes, Dunt. Yeah, he says, you can see this in stories and tales, though. So it makes sense. It was really going on. It really was. And a lot of your fairy tales and stuff go right back to this. But it's esoteric. It's in symbolism and metaphor, because they couldn't just come out and talk about this stuff. They talked about it in allegory and symbolism for the ones that knew, because they were being persecuted by the church and hunted down. De Vere even talks about, everybody talks about the Jewish Holocaust, and the word Holocaust actually, in its first context, was used talking about sacrificial lambs. So when you say Holocaust, you're talking about a sacrifice. But he talks about there was over 1,000-year elven Holocaust, where they were persecuted by the Christians and the Roman Church and actually forced into hiding. And that's where you get the story of the Druids. They were the forest people because they were forced to go into hiding, according to De Vere. Yep, golden teachers, yeah. So Cain's killing Abel was a blood sacrifice, yeah. And I talk about that in my book also, The Epic of Esau, Birthright and Seed War. There's so many things in this study, in this next book that I'm writing, that does. It just interweaves perfectly with my other book, and that's why I'm so excited to get into this with you guys. But yes, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here and that they believe is woven into the Gnostic thinking, because it stemmed from that. Excuse me. Okay, we'll continue on. I was just checking in with you guys in the chat to see if you had any feedback or questions or anything like that. Okay, so that is the groundwork that I wanted to lay before we got into the meat of the matter. And that's a lot of groundwork because we're almost an hour in. But yeah, this is just awesome. And hey guys, if you haven't done so already, please take the time to hit that like button and give us a comment over in the comment section. Maybe share us with a family or a friend member, okay? That is the podcast currency. It doesn't cost you anything. It just takes you a few minutes to take the time to click that button, man. In the words of Felicia, when she was talking to Ice Cube, y'all stingy. Don't be stingy with those likes, okay? If you're here, you're watching, it means you like it. Contribute by clicking that like button. All right, now continuing on. Oh, Stephen, hey, bud. You were mentioned earlier. I was like, if he's here and when he sees this, he's going to get real excited because it ties into a lot of his divine feminine research that he's been talking about here lately. So now we laid all that groundwork, and now we arrive to the Scythians. And I talked about this a little bit in that St. Patrick's Day live episode that I did, and how, once again, there was another name, Leprechaun, that was spun out of proportion and mythologicalized, that went back to these elven race people. So we see it over and over and over again. Okay, so now the Scythians. It says, in this discussion we speak of the Scythians as fairies, dragons, vampires, and or elves. We are not talking about the race as a whole, but of the royal Scythians. Okay, so when I say the Scythians and talking here, I'm not talking about them as an entire people group. I'm not saying the entire race was of this dragon court and dragon and or serpent seed. The royals, the ruling class, a certain small percentage of them were of this dragon court. So it says they got their names from their curved blades, the scythe, the sickle, originally spelled Sithian, Scythane, where we get the word scythe, the curved farming blade. The name Scythian is related to a group of words that appear in Indo-European languages as far apart as Eire and North India, indicating that they had a common Aryan origin of Scythia. And like I mentioned earlier, the Phoenicians, these people were world travelers. They were everywhere, and you see it in their symbolism and their practices worldwide. And I'm connecting those dots in this book. Another word is Siddir, Siddir. In Danish society, this word refers to witches who practice knot tying and loosening, related to the mythic Norns, the Mori and or Fates, who wove the destinies of humanity. That's who they're referring to. They're talking about this elven race once again. In India, they were called the Siddhis. So instead of Siddir in the Danes, in India they called them Siddhis. So very similar. So these are the same group of people here, and it says that this word describing the powers of the yogi who self-realize. So just like the Gnostics, they got the Christ consciousness. They ascended. They self-realized, this yogi. Okay, it says, so again, the Irish word Sidhe, Sidhe, and we talked about that a little bit in that other episode, describing the fairies, and means powers. Again, the people of the powers is the Scythians or Sedhenes, Sidheans. And also it means the people of the mounds. Yeah, think about North America, okay? The mounds were the mounds of the fairy folk, or the fairy mounds. We talked about in that last episode, once again, the Hill of Tara. This was a mound where this holy relic rock was, and it was the place of coronation, where they crowned the high kings of the elven race in Ireland. Okay, it says the Sheila na gigs. And remember, that's kind of like an Irish term. You've heard, oh, the Sheila, talking about a female. The Sheila na gigs were goddesses of sovereignty and transcendence. And once again, we're in Ireland here. They were placed over doors to churches, symbolically. And that many built on the site of ancient groves. So these churches in Ireland, above the doorway, they have these goddesses of sovereignty and transcendence. And they're over the doorways of the churches, which many of the churches were built over sacred druid and elven race sites. And it was also the place of their ancient groves, and was symbolic for entering the vulva of the maiden into the other world. So yeah, let that sink in a minute. At the churches in Ireland, once again, like Christmas, like Easter, they take these pagan traditions, these pagan symbols, and they just adopt them. They're like, okay, yeah, you see this goddess here? This sex goddess that you guys worship, she's in our church too. Come on over here. They only cared about stuff in their coffers, folks. Oh, thank you. Yeah, anyone who hasn't read the Epic of Esau, you definitely should. I think you should. So, continuing on here, it says, but they were permitted above church doorways because the early church wanted to be identified with the old ways. They remained in order to attract and further convert pagans. And that kind of goes with what I said earlier. The fairies were usually tall, pale-skinned, with golden red hair and green eyes, unlike the Celts, who were stocky, ruddy, and had ruddy complexions and dark hair. So when you hear about the fairies, the fair folk, the druids. These are in Ireland, but they're not Celts. This is the elven race. This is the dragon court. This is, in the biblical lens, the serpent seed. But it says in pre-Christian history, an Aryan was a high king. The real Aryans were red-haired and green-eyed. So, totally opposite of what Hitler and the Nazi Party was trying to achieve. You remember, they wanted blonde hair and blue eyes. But it's saying right here that the true high kings, the real Aryans, were red-haired and green-eyed. Esau was red-haired. And here again it says the Aryan Hittites. What do I talk about in the Epic of Esau? That's one of the clans, one of the giant clans that Esau marries into and interbreeds with, and births the Amalekite race, whose name means the blood lickers. It ties in like hand in glove, folks. But it says that the Aryan Hittites were close allies of the Jews who chose draconian royal family. And then he claims that the house of David made the Israelites, in a culture sense, like the early Aryan nation. They were neighbors. It says the Scythian and the Aryan Scythian Gaels had many settlements around Israel and Judea. Hurrians, like the Scythians, were Aryans. It says some Danaan fled southwest of mainland Britain. Several centuries later, when the Romans encountered them in Scotland, they referred to them as Picts. And I talked about this in great detail on that episode on St. Patrick's Day. You can find that in the live stream section if you missed that live for St. Patrick's Day. But yeah, when the Romans encountered them, they referred to them as Picts, P-I-C-T-S. This word slowly changed to describe the elven peoples as the Pixies. Okay? It says these beings would become known as the leprechauns. The etymology of this word was thought to mean small-bodied. That's where you get the midget leprechauns in green, right? But actually, it means scaly-bodied. From the Latin word lepra, as in leprosy, scaly-skinned. But this wasn't talking about leprosy or real scaly skin. This was to describe their fish scale armor, which was very common for the Draconians. The Danes and the Danaan, the Tuatha Dé Danann, from Greater Scythia. These weren't Celts. These, what they call Celts and Druids, they were Scythians. They were dragon courts, serpent seed. And once again, like I said, I'm not painting with a broad brush saying the entire race was. No, the important ones, the ruling class of them were. It says the scaly twin pronged tail of the wovir or mermaid was derived from the use by Grail Maidens and their fish scale armored leggings worn with swan and or raven feathered cloaks. It sounds a lot like harpies, does it not? Bird, scaly, legged at the bottom, covered in fur, feathers. Beautiful, dark, or fair-skinned pixies. I mean, it does. To me, it sounds a lot like the harpies. But it says that the Pict, P-I-C-T, or Pictish, means painted, referring to their bodies covered in tattoos. Some of their favorites were the labyrinth and or spiral designs. So a lot of their tattoos were these, hypnotic swirl spiral designs, and even in square, like a labyrinth. Pizzagate, anyone? all the signage that you see and all the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, calling us goys and all the stuff he practiced. I mean, it makes sense now, doesn't it, folks? But it says these people group was believed to make it all the way to China. Now, this really blew my mind. Okay, it says that the Tuatha Dé Danann mummy, excavated by the Chinese in the 1960s, had red golden hair and was buried with a cache of Tartarian plaid cloth and spiral painted pottery. Once again, you see these common themes everywhere. The red hair, the spiral painted pottery. Now to the fun stuff, okay? You've seen this in the artwork. So now we're getting to the main course. You're getting to the filet mignon. You've seen this on the, if you paid attention on the thumbnail artwork, there was this whale. Then there was this woman with her leg hiked up, pointing to a garter around her leg. That's important. And she is a Grail Maiden. And in the background, you have a city, a Sidhe, which is a mound. And they were known as the people of the mounds, the fairy mounds. And the setting sun behind it with the Aurora Borealis symbol. Here's where we get all this from. So, put your seatbelt on, folks. It's going to be a bumpy ride. Now, this is what I found today with reading and taking my notes and, writing this book. And this is what got me excited. I talk about it in other episodes with other authors. I'm like, hey, did you have a moment where you found something that just totally blew your mind? Where you had to jump up and, pace back and forth through the house and just be like, oh my gosh. This was my moment right here. When I got to this point, man, I totally had a Leonardo DiCaprio moment.
Gentlemen, you had my curiosity, but now you have my attention.
Yeah, now you have my attention. Okay, so this is Druids and the trees. Druids were associated with groves. The Druids, as priest kings of the dragon, were connected specifically to the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. Thus the title of my book, The Tale of Two Trees, of two bloodlines, two genealogies. Okay, it says, this was the symbolism behind the Hindu and Buddhist Tantra and Shaktric systems. So when you see the spinal cord and the chakras going up, this was another symbolism for the tree of life. You find this in the Kabbalah, everywhere, and I'm not going to spoil it, but you find it everywhere, and I'm going to go through some of them. And keep in the back of your mind, these people were drinkers of the blood. They had dragon princesses and Grail Maidens that were virgins, and when their monthly purge come, that's what they drank, and that's how they got their power. I'm going to show you a bunch of myths, legends that metaphorically talk about this, and once you see it, you're never going to forget it, and you're never going to look at these stories the same way again, and you're going to start looking for them in other stories. And if you find them, please let me know, because the more eyes you got on something, the better off you are. So it says, in Viking lore, it was their sacred tree, Yggdrasil, with a coiled serpent at its base by a pool. Okay? Are you staying with me here? The most sacred tree to the Druids was not the oak, but the apple tree. So here you go. I've already mentioned two scenarios that kind of correlate. You also have the tree in the Garden of Eden and the serpent. You have the Yggdrasil with the coiled serpent at the base. Another one I'll throw up to you, excuse me, was in the legend of Jason and the Argonauts. And this was up in Scandinavia too. what happens? They take this golden fleece and hang it on a tree in the midst of a garden, and it is guarded also by a dragon. So, that's why the tree of Eden has been portrayed as an apple tree through oral tradition. It's not in the Bible. And this is how it got there. But can be interchangeable with the pomegranate. The apples represented the glands of the female body. The apples of red gold produced the enriched vaginal womb blood that was consumed by both male and female druids. The serpents or dragons in the tree, symbolically here. And the pomegranate is red. And you have it in a lot of religious, symbology. And when you cut the pomegranate, it's filled with hundreds of seeds representing fertility. Once again, going back to the Grail in their eyes, the female womb, the place of life where power and blood flown. In Kabbalah, both Jesus' mother and wife, like I said, this is from their point of view, were called the crystal wombs from whence shined forth the light of the world. This strongly suggests the concept of starfire. And that's an alchemical term, just addressing what we've been talking about tonight. The consumption of the female vaginal blood for power. It says, which is also consumption of the menstrual cycle blood of the goddess. Also, in Viking mythology, the goddess Idun, sounds a lot like Eden in the Bible, Edun, offers red apples to the gods to keep them healthy and young. Once again, I think this is hinting at symbolically the same thing. Offers the red apples to keep the gods healthy and young. The dragon court consumed this blood to stay healthy and young. But people don't get too grossed out, because whether you know it or not, a lot of us are consuming this anyway. If you take supplements like HRT, you should know that it comes from urine of either mares or French nuns. The ones who swore off men and sex. If you catch them young enough, they would be virgins also. It says that melatonin was the primary hormone extracted in the blood rites of Diana. So it is your choice. Others include oxytocin, prolactin, serotonin, adenosine, triphosphate, dopamine, telomerase, and retinol. But Scythian warriors were bloodthirsty at times, helping them with their vampire and werewolf imagery that they were trying to portray them as. Roman reports describe them as eating the flesh and drinking the blood of their fallen foes in battle. Once again, this is Nephilimic giant behavior, is it not? When they went to scout the Holy Land, they come back with a bad report. It said, we were like grasshoppers in their sight, and these people devoured the inhabitants of the land. They were cannibals. It says, and that's why I think it shows that this people group traveled the world and left their footprint everywhere they went. It says, this was obviously a corruption of earlier ritual practices. Drinking the blood of friend or foe in battle was a common practice in Scotland to obtain strength. Clogging your arteries with someone else's adrenaline. It says Elvins practiced Phoenician, and this is wild. If any of this wasn't wild yet, it's about to get real wild. Elvins practiced Phoenician and Pharaonic marriage. Okay? Phoenicians would practice the union between the father and daughter. And where do we find in the Bible, when you go through the genealogies, and I talk about it in my book, Epic of Esau, I cannot remember his name now, it's slipping me, but it's the son that was produced from Esau marrying into the Hittite clan. And this person birthed Amalek and the Amalekite race. But that union there was with his daughter. So this was a Phoenician practice to keep the blood pure. Okay? And it says, in the horse breeding world, this produces the finest, healthiest thoroughbreds. Okay, now the Pharaonic practiced the union between brother and sister. We see this in legends of the gods. Just one example. Eliphaz, that's it. Thank you, Stephen. Yes, Eliphaz. But the Pharaonic practiced the union between brother and sister, and we see this with many tales and legends, especially of the gods, and that's who these elven race, were, right? One example is Osiris and Isis. Now, according to geneticists at Cambridge University, you can continue up to 300 years, and that's 10 generations, before any genetic problems. And so some of the people that talk about, all the interbreeding, it just makes them mentally retarded and they have birth defects. And, well, they can, but it takes up to 300 years and 10 generations for it to show up. So they will interbreed with each other and keep that bloodline pure, up to 300 years or 10 generations before they have to introduce, someone from outside the family, to kind of keep the line going without defect. So over time, it slowly waters down the blood. Okay, and that says, and I got in the note here, it says, is this the reason why God forbade these practices in the Old Testament? You shall not uncover the naked, your father's nakedness, for it is your mother. It's your father's wife's nakedness, because her nakedness is his nakedness. You shall not lie with his sister. It just goes on and lists all these families, members that you are not to have sex with and breed with. Well, you don't get a law, rule, regulation unless that said thing is already happening. And that's because this serpent seed was doing this to keep their bloodlines pure. And that's why God in the Bible strictly forbid it. All the things that this serpent seed, royal dragon court families are recorded to do are explicitly, every single one, God tells his people not to do it. Don't drink the blood. Don't eat the flesh. Don't sacrifice your children to Molech. Don't interbreed with your family members. Do not practice sorcery and witchcraft. All of these things that God forbids his people to do in the Bible, it's what these people were doing. Like I said before, I'm a C+ average guy, but come on now, there's some point that coincidence has to fade. If it smells like fire, and it's got smoke coming off of it, and it's glowing orange and red, it's probably a fire, folks. So if I continue, it says that leading up to the conflict between the Tuatha Dé Danann and the Malaysians. Now this is in their mythologies, that the Tuatha Dé Danann were a mythological race. They were gods, and they ruled the land of Ireland until these Malaysians showed up, and they defeated them and forced them into the other world, forced them underground, according to their legends and mythology. It says that up until this conflict, they were at peace and interbreeding together. They were both Scythian tribes. And also, so here they are, they're both Scythian tribes living in peace together, interbreeding. Then all of a sudden, they break out in war against each other and start killing each other. And one is banished to the other world and forced to go underground. Don't the Bible and the book of Enoch say that the Nephilim were made to war against each other? And that their fathers had to sit and watch in anguish? And eventually, they were driven underground and drowned by the flood? I mean, once again, this could be, just a bunch of coincidences.
A bullshit. A bullshit. A bullshit. A bullshit.
That's how I feel about it. Now, if I keep continuing here, it says that they're Grail Maidens. Here we go. Putting a pretty big bow on this here. Their Grail Maidens were treated as goddesses. Here you go, Stephen. Here you get your divine feminine. And almost worshipped and believed to be the incarnations of the nurturing dragon goddess Dea Volna Gnosis. So it's even in her name, Gnosis, wisdom, knowledge. So the goddess that gives the blood of knowledge. Once again, I brought this up earlier, but I got it in my notes, so I'll bring it up again. But in Revelation, the whore of Babylon comes riding a red dragon with a cup of her porneia. It was said that members of the Dragon Corps that were trained by the Magi were said to have ridden the dragon. You can't make this stuff up, folks. So this royal, dragon court serpent seed family, their blood was so pure that it gave them magical abilities and supernatural, minds and intelligence. And just like Harry Potter, these pure bloods, once again, they're telling you right out front, just like Harry Potter and Hogwarts, they took the pure bloods, right? And they were fighting against the mud bloods. And they weren't as good at magic with them because they weren't pure blood. The magic, the power was in the blood, right? So it says that this school or training that these magi would pass this knowledge down through the bloodline. Once they went through this course, and it was very selective, not all got to do it. Only the creme de la creme, the cream of the crop, as the Macho Man says, got to do this. But the ones that did, they were said to have ridden the dragon, just like the whore of Babylon rides the dragon with her cup of porneia. This is exactly what the Bible's talking about. And like I said, I'm just skimming. I'm hitting high points and keeping on going. There's so much. I cannot wait to get this book to you guys. And I'll tease out some of it as we go, so follow along. But here it says, and this is the cool part that I'm getting ready to tie up and put a bow on this thing. It says, the maidens, as I talked about earlier, ranked second in the hierarchy, only under the dragon queen herself. And remember, this is a matriarchal society ruled by the women. The women had the power. The women where everything. This is where you get your divine, goddess, divine feminine imagery. It says that the maidens at the proper age became dragon princesses when their menstruation blood flown. It says, and were the next in line for the high queen position. But he claims here the word church, as we know it, came from the dragon court as well. That it derives from Circa, Circa. Sounds like the witch's name Circe, right? Who drank blood and practiced witchcraft from the Black Sea area of Scythia. But it says, and the old Highland euphemism for going to the kirk was actually going to the stones, meaning a stone circle. That is their church, the stone circles, where they would practice their rituals and rites. Now, we get to Transylvania and the Turnbridge Wells. Okay, Scythian royal houses were said to be of great beauty. Remember that this bloodline had selective breeding. Only the fairest could be the queens and kings, and they were tall in stature, with the palest of complexions, and the reddest of red golden hair and emerald green eyes. And in the Bible it talks about all their kings were of giant stature. And remember when they chose the guy that King David overthrew, King Saul, the reason why he was chosen, it says plainly that they wanted a war king like the other nations. The other nations had giants, had Nephilim, warlord kings. And it says that he was head and shoulders taller than the rest of the Jewish people. So this, kind of goes along with this also. We often see elven races represented as swans in literature. It's not only represented that way for their beauty, but also their psychological condition as being enlightened ones and from the heavens. One example is the story of Leanne Sidhe, Sidhe. Once again, that ties into the elven race. We broke into the etymology of that word earlier. Who was an Irish female fairy that later developed as being part muse and part vampire. She is supposed to represent the grace and perfection of the elven princesses. Les Belles Dames sans Mercy was immortalized in Keats' poem of the same name. So, in England during the 1300s, this vampire maiden was the Maid of Kent. Some believe that she was the Countess of Salisbury. It was recorded at the Summer's Ball, and here's where you get that image of the woman pointing at the garter in the thumbnail. This is a bombshell. It was recorded at the Summer's Ball in Calais. She let her garter slip. King Edward III retrieved it with haste, holding it high and proclaiming, "Shamed be the person who thinks evil of it." Why would somebody think a piece of women's under armor or undergarment, a garter, would think evil of it? This motto can be found as a garter surrounding the shield of the royal coat of arms of the United Kingdom. You have this garter represented in the coat of arms. There has to be something to it, right? Professor Margaret Murray asked this question: why was it recorded? And why was the king's response so over the top? Why would he threaten anyone's attitude towards a garment of women's underwear? No point in making a song and a dance about it unless it had significance. And it did. The garter, or gartiere, was a small buckled belt worn by women around the top of the left thigh, or just below the knee on men. It was known as a menstrual badge. You see where we're going, right? A symbol of the womb and Grail, but also a representation of the Aurora Borealis, the serpent eating its own tail. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, alchemically, this represents the evolution of the serpent seed, the dragon court. The serpent, by eating his own tail, consuming himself, the blood of his family, evolves into a dragon. I got this here. It says, alchemically showing the serpent by consuming itself has become the dragon, a vampire. This alluding to the consumption of the blood in their own kind being the source of their power. It was the witch's belt, the devil's badge, a dynastic emblem of the fairy race that descended from Lilith and Cain. The Order of the Garter was founded by Edward III in 1399. Both the Order of the Garter and the Dragon Court that was re-established by Sigismund in 1408 both used the Aurora Borealis as their symbol. And I showed you that at the beginning of the show, that emblem, and broke down all the little things inside of it. This is still in use today in the Angevin Imperial and Royal Dragon Court. The symbol is also in Sumer, pronounced shimmer, much like the word shimmer, meaning to glow, like they were known as the Shining Ones. But this symbol is a serpent circling itself in spirals, like a vortex. Remember the Pizzagate symbols I mentioned earlier. The allure of the fairy gold, the Liane Sidi and the Countess of Salisbury appear beautiful and disarm their prey, and taking their blood or life force, sometimes both, leaving them lovesick. And once again, this sounds a lot like sirens, like elfames, and succubuses, who drain you of your essence and seduce you. Stories of these shining ones can be found in South America, relating to the shamans and kings of El Dorado. Is this the same race of people, the Elvins, the fairies, traveling the world and enlightening mankind? And here's the whales, sacred whales. The serpent dragon Yomengander and Viking lore encircles / coils at the base of their world tree Yggdrasil. At its roots is a pool. In Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, this same theme is repeated. They talk of a hazel tree by a well. In the well lives a salmon of knowledge. On top of the tree is an eagle who drops a blood-red nut of wisdom into the well 13 times a year. Many ancient calendars have 13 months, by the way. We're missing one. So there it is, consumed by this salmon of knowledge. Not all fairy whales were water sources. Archaeologists in Britain have found these boreholes, as in mine howl, and that's a name of a site or hole in the ground they found, they call a well, in Orkney, Orkney, where in fact Bronze Age ritual chambers, that's what these were. Locals called them fairy hills. We call them mounds in North America. These holes in the ground were flagged stone staircases that spiraled down. Here we have that spiral again, and this is what they're alluding to when they draw these symbols. Okay, these are holes in the ground that spiral down into a ritual chamber. Some examples of these wells are the Well of Necton in Ireland, and it has 9 hazelnut trees surrounding it, and it's said to have the salmon of knowledge resting in it. So I'm going to search this and try to give you a visualization. The well, oh come on. Of NECH, where's my Necton? Okay, so if I do share screen, okay, here it is right here. Necton, the keeper of the sacred well and the forbidden waters of wisdom. Here it is with a stone arch over it, and just like the Catholic Church, they claim these sacred sites and place Christian imagery on top of them. And let's see if I continue on, because I want to keep up this screen share because there's more imagery. Okay, so you have the 9 hazelnut trees surrounding it, and it's said to have the salmon of knowledge resting in it. We also have St. Anne's Well in Britain that sits next to Robin Hood's Hill Labyrinth. This well was dedicated to Anne, aka Mother Mary, a figure linked to fertility, earth, ancestral lineage, and believed to be built on top of an older pagan spring. So let's see if I can find it. Saint Anne Well. Okay, here's St. Anne's Well. All these different pictures. There's the staircases that it's talked about. So there you see some of these imagery that a lot of these led to ritual chambers. Okay, and just like last time, I am building to a crescendo. Stay with me. It says, these were for ritual purposes. Stated earlier, the archaeologists that found many of these whales were spiral staircases going into ritual chambers. Yeah, get some doc merch, y'all. Thank you, golden teachers. But continue, it says, would it be reasonable to believe that a maiden priestess, okay, here we go, all the symbology that I told you about, okay? Would it be reasonable to believe that the maiden priestess would be that salmon of knowledge, whose red nuts, other examples show, like I showed earlier, like apples, which was the metaphor for the monthly flow, right? Whose red nuts fall from the tree, symbolic for family trees, genealogies. Would this be the same story/ritual as Persephone and her pomegranate wine, her red wine, the menstrual flow? This red liquid that represented fertility, life, death, and rebirth. Many cultures made offerings to the gods with it. They were offered at the Jewish temple and consumed at significant holy days like Rosh Hashanah. Egypt did the same thing. They would burst its fruit at Jewish weddings to see how many children that they would have, because it's filled with seeds. It was also tied to Dionysus and used in his and the Eleusinian mysteries and ritual rites. It was their Eucharist. All this stuff. It's not talking about wine, folks. To us, the mundane, it is. Persephone was the daughter of Demeter. Persephone had to descend into the underworld. There she was tricked by Hades. When eating the seeds of the pomegranate, she was said to be bound to Hades forever in covenant. The disappearance of her daughter made Demeter bring the first winter. The god struck a deal with Hades. Part of the year she would stay with Hades as the queen of the underworld. The other half be allowed to return from the underworld to be with her mother Demeter, thus ending winter and bringing spring. Symbolically, the time of fertility, the time of all the fertility ritual rites of rebirth. Could these whales be another version of the Queen of Sovereignty and her red beer of kingship? The Queen of Sovereignty was nature/land personified. In Celtic myth and early Irish traditions, which we already shown was ruled and influenced by the elves, the elven race, the king had to marry the land. And they entered into a marriage covenant, much like the one in Jewish tradition. They would covenant over a ritual ale, which was a red beer. Symbolically, this represented the life force of the land and or deity, her body, and by taking her in, he had the divine right to rule. He was made a dragon. So, the common theme in all of these stories are the same. One must descend, meet the feminine gatekeeper, drink of her offering of some type of red liquid, binding yourself in contract with her in order to return or ascend and be reborn. From the womb of the earth, it is said. Is this why the Greek translation of the giants were earthborn? Did they witness them doing these rites? With this in mind, it makes me wonder what exactly is under the tower of St. Michael's Church that rests on Gladsbury Thor, which is a man-made hill. It's a mound, a huge one. which under it is said to be the palace of Alberich or Oberon, the Elven King. And it says that Tor, as it is called, is basically a huge mound with a tower on top. It's not the original, as it had to be rebuilt after an earthquake of 1275 AD. Many myths align that this site was Avalon, an Arthur/Celtic tradition. It's said to be a hidden realm of immortals. Others believe it to be a hollow hill, obviously man-made, standing tall alone in the marsh with a spiral pattern going up. They believed that this hollow hill was a gateway to the other world. Medieval monks viewed Tor was tied to a fairy king, that on his defeat the church was built as a conquering symbol of Christianity. And I have to show you this. This thing was breathtaking. Screen share. Tell me this dude doesn't dominate the landscape. This is man-made. This is a mound, folks. And there's that tower on top that they're talking about. Here's another one. Look at that. That's beautiful, isn't it? What's under that? Amazing. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate you letting me nerd out. This is just some stuff that I found today and typed up, some notes in a little script here. That way I could stay on point. But this is exciting, dude, for me. And you guys got a teaser of what my upcoming book is going to be about. Okay, The Tale of Two Trees, Chasing the Dragon. And it dovetails perfectly with the Epic of Esau. If you guys have not read the Epic of Esau, I highly suggest you check it out, because I think it is a good primer for this next one right here. Because, like I said, a lot of the stuff just dovetails in and answers questions of things that I didn't even know existed, and filled in the gaps perfectly of that other book. I know some of you guys in the chat have read the book, and I'm sure through tonight's episode you've seen some loose ends that you didn't even know were loose ends tied up, and there's so much more. So stick with me, guys. I love yous. Consider hitting that like button if you're here and you watched it, you enjoyed it. You hitting that like button, you dropping a comment in that comment section while we're live, that is what signals to the algorithm that, hey, this is a good episode. People are digging it. I need to share it out to more people. And that's how we grow. The more we grow, the more we know, the more I can deep dive and research and do these kinds of things, guys. But if you enjoyed it, man, like I said, hit that like button, share it with a friend or family member, and hang tight. I will be teasing out some of these things just like I did the Epic of Esau. I teased out the Epic of Esau, little bits and pieces of it, for over a year before the book finally come out. But I was working full time. I'm doing this full time now, so I'm not going to make you wait a year or a year and a half. This thing's going to get out pretty quick. But I love you guys. Be sure to come back to the channel Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are picking back up on our Sunday night live study of Louis Ginsburg, Legends of the Jews. Okay? Love you guys. Hope you have a good rest of your week. Happy Friday. Until next time, torches high, guys.
Towns built out of borrowed light, thrones wiring into fear, truth chained high on mountain walls while vultures circle near.